Welcome back to Living with a Classic and part 2 of the disassembly of my old daily driver's engine, this 4.2 XK. Last part we took the head off, so if you haven't seen that you can check that out. And all I've done off camera is I removed all of the studs, head studs. They all came out really nicely and I flipped it over. That is it. I have tried to take front damper off, it's really stuck on there. And I don't have a flex plate or anything to lock the crank. So we'll remove the sump now, and then we can lock the crank, get that off, get the front cover off, and timing chain, all of that. But I've just loosened up most of these many bolts that hold this aluminum sump on. And got a couple more left to go. It's going to be really interesting to see what it looks like inside here. The bores look kind of worn. So it's amazing this thing actually didn't use any oil, and yes, I did drive this thing quite a bit, like I think about 10,000 kilometers. So I do know this engine pretty well. It doesn't rattle, it has good compression, it has really good oil pressure as well. It just uses a bit of coolant. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Also, I confessed in part 1 that I've dropped a washer into this engine. First time it's ever happened to me. And it's going to be really interesting to see where in the sump that has landed. All done on this side. I have a couple more on that side. Then we'll remove the sump and have a look at pickup screen, oil pump, everything. It's going to be really interesting to see what it looks like in here. Got 2 washers left to get off here. There's one. And there is the last one. So I think that should be it. Let's see. Okay, we have liftoff. And there we go. Pretty sludgy in here, but really not that bad. Still can't find that washer, but I'll let this sit for a bit here, and we might need to remove the baffle on the bottom to have a look at that. But everything's really nice looking here. If it's the first time that you're looking inside one of these engines, I think you can tell that even though it's just a 6-cylinder, it's a really big 6-cylinder, and it's massive inside. Everything's pretty massive. Let me just look at the oil feed pipes. Yeah, it's pretty big. But the nice thing about this engine, at least, was it was actually completely it was completely dry. It wasn't leaking out the rear, wasn't leaking out the front. It was overall quite a good engine. But yeah, I'm gonna clean up a little bit, and then we'll remove pickup pipe for the oil pump. We'll remove the oil pump, remove that pipe, and then I'm thinking, yeah, we'll jam a piece of wood probably around the webbing here somewhere, and then we'll just try and get this off. I didn't think it was going to work, but after having about a 1.5 meter long bar attached to this, I got this nut loose and jammed a piece of wood in there to make it stop turning so we can actually get all of this apart, which is really good. Hopefully this little thing wants to come off as well. There we go. That is that off. And it's actually in good shape. No cracking or anything. So we'll be keeping that. Now, haven't really decided yet. I think maybe we'll flip it back over, or I'll have to work down on the ground. But we're going to take off the front cover, do timing chain, and then we'll do pump and all of that. The last bolt here, and then we'll get the front cover off. Might need to hit it a little bit. Seems to be really stuck on there. It's moving at least. There we go. Need a new dead blow. It started cracking on me. Be really careful with, very gentle with the pry bar here. Trying to get this to come apart. There we go. And we have front main seal here, which actually wasn't leaking. That's one thing I may want to try on my daily driver, because that thing has a leaking front main. And you can get these off without disturbing anything. Just need to unwind these, and it's a pain. Can be done in place. So we'll see. I'm not sure if I'll do that, or if it doesn't leak that much, or I might just not care about it. It's not really worth pulling the engine or the subframe to get the sump off to do all of it. But in here, yeah, hydraulic chain tensioner. Once again, everything's in really good shape. Just, it's a shame. But we'll get that out of the way. Here and here. I'll remove the timing chain. And then we'll get to the really fun part, which I'm looking forward to, is the bearings. We'll get this off here. Oh, it's very tight interference fit here. There we go. Now we have some locking tabs in different places. Try and knock those out. And I mean, yeah, I'm gonna save all these parts, but if I'm building this thing back together at some point, I mean, we would put in a new chain, upper and lower new chain tensioners. You would, I would do it just because at least if I want to rebuild it, I want to do it right. So, I do not know if I'll ever actually do that, but you never know. Maybe I'll come up with a fun project car with a bad engine or something at some point. And I know that I have an engine I can build. So this has most likely not been apart since, those are bigger, since the 80s. This is a pretty late Series 3 block, so I don't know, 1984, 1985, something like that. Okay. I'm trying to keep everything sort of organized by containers, so we have one with all the cylinder head stuff, one with all the bolts from the sump, and then we'll do one with all the timing chain stuff. Try and keep it a little bit organized at least. My intention initially was that this was probably not ever going to be an engine again, but as long as we don't find anything crazy up here, I think with a bit of money spent, this could actually be an engine again. So probably not worth it at the moment, but at some point in the future, it might be difficult to get a hold of these engines. You never know. And we'll just take the whole double chain assembly off like this completely. So not exactly the correct way to remove it, but it's off. Like I said, I would replace most of that. I'll leave that guide in there, and all the guides are actually really, really nice. There's hardly any wear on anything. Now, let us change gloves and go up here and start with the oil pump and all that. Oil pump should be loose. I made it easy for myself. I was in here, 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 and here. Sorry if there's a lot of background noise in these videos. We have snowstorms going on, and I have heat running on max here just to do everything to stay warm. But oil pump removed. Don't think we're going to open it up because I just want to keep everything as complete as possible. This thing also had excellent oil pressure. However, if we find that the bearings are absolute toast, we might open this thing up and have a look. Now, like I said, I removed 3 of those bolts there. What I'm going to do is I'll put the nut back on the crank so we can start cranking this thing over a bit, but there are a couple pistons we could probably start removing, like 1, 2, actually we can get to probably 4. Yeah, we can get a lot of them out right now. So the ones that are low down in the bore are probably easiest to start with. So we'll crank it over a little bit, get some of those out, and once all the pistons are out, we can start getting the mains out. I think we'll actually start with piston number 6 here. And we always go through this in all videos. XK engines are numbered backwards. So the front of the engine, it's number 6, and the rear is number 1. That wasn't too bad. And of course we're going to keep everything together and numbers, so yeah, if we end up putting everything just back together at some point, we don't lose track of things. Different ways of doing that. You can stamp, do things. I'm going to check if there are any markings. The mains I'm just going to put back into the block, but I think we'll just do some simple markings on all the pistons. And the bearing, oh, they stayed behind. Yeah, we're down to the copper there, if you can see. This was on that side. Let's see what the other one looks like. There, I knew I had a new container of things. There we go. And my block of wood here might be in the way, actually. Didn't think of that. Let's see. Yes, it's in the way, but Here's the other side of that shell. So, I mean, it's definitely time for new bearings. But we have a closer look later. There are some slight marks in it, but I can't catch them at all with a nail, with my fingernail. So this could, that one so far could just be polished. I gotta move this piece of wood here, and then we'll get that piston out. Let me see if I can. We'll just. It's sliding up quite nicely. And piston rings are all nice and loose. Nothing's carboned up or stuck. I can feel a little bit of that, but really not too bad there on the skirts. I'm not feeling any play or anything. Once again, everything on this engine, it's just massive. Okay, so I'm going to take the other ones out, lay them out afterwards, and have a look at them. And then hopefully none of them look worse than this. All the pistons are out now, and we're going to have a look at them in a little bit, because there was a really weird surprise there. When it comes to the crank, cylinder 2, here, there's been a dirt sitting and going through here. There is scoring on the bearing, and there is scoring that I can feel with my fingernail here. So, yeah, it would need probably a regrind. But that's a shame, because the rest of this thing is really good. Could just polish up. But that one, sadly not. You can see it's just been going out through there. But I'm going to change gloves. I'll pick you guys up, and then I'll have a closer look at this once again, and then we'll have a look at that piston, which, yeah, something really surprising happened. You can see here, that's pretty bad. I can feel it with my fingernails. So that is some dirt that's gone through there, which is a real shame, because all the other ones could just be polished. I don't know, maybe this could as well. I have to check with the machine shop, but yeah, that is a bit of a shame. But let's have a look here. All the bearings are pretty worn on the top sides. This is how they're laid out. You see they're all to the copper like we saw on the other one. On the other side, they're starting to go to the copper. This is the cylinder that has the scoring. You can see the dirt that's been riding around in there. Cylinder 2, there is the one where we had the leak, the head gasket leak. And look at this, we have a busted piston ring. My guess is, because the engine did sort of hydraulic at one point, or hydrolock, and I mean, it felt like that on the starter, then it sort of pushed around. My guess is that's when we cracked the piston ring. So it's one of the top rings. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I just took it out, and then in my hand, that just fell apart. Rest of it, definitely okay. I mean, it all depends what you're building. I mean, let's say we were having a look at this and we were just doing, yeah, a home sort of on the cheap rebuild. You could probably try and polish this a little bit by yourself. I mean, I'm not saying we'd build like a race engine, but if you just want something to run in your daily, I would reuse those pistons with new piston rings and new bearings. This one would be a little bit on the iffy side, but I think these are not very high revving engines, and for just a home engine, I could probably live with that. But of course, if you're going to build something really nice, especially if you're building something for someone else, you would sort that out. But like I said, if I was rebuilding this on the cheap to put in my daily, so far I'm not seeing anything that would put me off that much. Now we need to get the mains off and have a look at that. Hopefully the crank isn't any worse there. All right, I am just curious now, so we'll have a look at another main. Let's see where I can put my leg. There we go. It's going to be quite interesting to see what they look like. But like I said, this thing had no knocking, nothing like that. It had really good oil pressure, and it's very weird that that piston ring was not making any noise at all. If you're really unlucky, I mean, they could have stacked on top of each other or something, and I mean, it could have caused a lot of damage to that bore. We're gonna have to look at it later. It could have locked up everything. Let's see if we can. Oh, there we go. And sort of like expecting you have most of the force on this side of the bearing, and we are, I mean, it's time for new bearings. We're down to the copper. Same story goes here. No. Or no. No. That is scoring, I can feel. So this crank would need to get reground. But, yeah, let's just continue taking it apart. I'll take apart the rest of it and I'll show you guys the results. And then we'll lift the crank out. And then we pretty much have this thing stripped down. Alright, I need to confess something. A little bit of an issue happened. I thought I was recording, and I wasn't. First time that's happened, but I'm really sorry about that. But you haven't really missed much. All I did was I put the block down on the ground, and I removed here. You have the drive, it's right over there, for the oil pump, from the oil pump to the speedo. And that's pretty simple. This is how it really goes. So this shaft goes up through here, and then you have this gear sitting there, and then through that you have a nut and a locking washer. So you knock down the locking washer, you can tap this out, and then that comes off. So pretty straightforward. And then the only thing left is, of course, the rear main, which is 2 Allen screws right there from the bottom. And then you have here just the seal there. And judging by everything, it's pretty much as you'd expect. Everything is worn down, like we said. And yeah, it would need a regrind, the crank, if I ever use that. And yeah, but that's one thing that's really amazing. I posted a little bit of a preview video. I posted that for channel members and for Patreons, and I showed the piston ring. And I just had some comments on that. Someone said, it is amazing how well an engine can run with broken, damaged parts inside, just showing how robust these engines actually are. And that's quite true. The only reason I took this thing off the road was the coolant consumption. I did not notice it had bad oil pressure. It had really good oil pressure, but you know, bearings are quite worn, even scored, and we have a broken piston ring, and it was still smooth, and yeah, quite weird. I have found one thing though. Let me grab here. Remember the washer and things? And we had a comment in the first video. Yes, I did have rags all around there. However, things can still happen. And that has just been sitting down there in the sludge, doing absolutely no harm to anything. So yeah, that is the complete disassembly of this engine. We have all the parts here. I am going to let all the oil run off most of them a little bit, and then I'm going to pack things up. I'm going to save everything, even though, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to save everything for a bit. These engines are not that common where I live, and you never know what you could need. You know, you could run over, hit something, crack a sump, spare sump. It's good to have. The block is technically savable. Of course, you've got to check the cracks in it, but I don't think so. You could put new liners in that and it would be good to go. It might even be good to go with just a skim. Let me grab a flashlight in a second and we'll have a look at the bores. They're not terrible, but definitely don't want to put it back together like this. Otherwise, just to conserve everything, I'm going to pick up just the cheapest wheel bearing grease I can find, and I'm just going to cover the crank and all that, and then cover that in plastic saran wrap, and just do everything, put it in cardboard boxes, and keep it in a dry location. And hopefully, if I ever need it or need to get to it, it won't have corroded and it can actually be usable. So let's see. So there's definitely some vertical scoring, but definitely not that bad. The shocking thing is, let's see, this is cylinder 2. You can't see any marks or any scoring from that bad piston ring, which is kind of incredible. But other than that, it's not too bad. Like we said before, if you were doing just like a cheap home rebuild, putting together a daily driver engine, you don't mind if it was not perfect. This thing you could, just the crank, but I mean, if you're not, you could almost just polish that, almost. But let's say if the crank was a little bit better, then you could put this thing together with new bearings, just hone out the cylinders yourself, new piston rings, put this thing together, and it would actually probably be a pretty good little engine. Anyways, that is it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm not sure if you can see out that window, but if you see over the boot lid of the XJS, you see snow up. So you can see how much it's been snowing. It's pretty bad. I've just been out with the tractor, getting rid of some of that, and we're gonna get more tonight. So I'm gonna pack these things up, get this out of the way, but hope you guys enjoyed this disassembly. And yeah, sorry about the little bit of missing footage, but things happen. And I'm not going to put it back on it and reassemble it for that. The main caps, I'm going to reassemble on the engine, keep their bearings, just get rid of them. Everything was completely standard, so this engine has probably not been apart. When I had it apart for the head gasket, it was probably the first time it was apart. All the bearings are standards, pistons are standard, everything is completely standard. So it was a regular Series 3 4.2 with, we don't know how many miles on it, but it was actually running pretty strongly, and that just shows that these are tough old engine, the XK engine. Anyways, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Till next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.